fact, by the way, you pray for the Moshiach ben Yosef 3 times a day. I don't know if you know that. You know that? It says, Es Semach David, and the offspring of David, right? Who is that? Is that David HaMelech? No, it's Moshiach ben Yosef. Yeah, who says that?
He's not Semach David.
Who?
He's not Semach David. He's Semach
Yosef. No, Semach David.
Your
Because
research
he's
says
the beginning of David.
It's not David, it's Tzemach David. I heard
Tzemach.
Tzemach Moshiach ben Yosef.
Yes, exactly.
Tzemach. I can't remember. Maybe I heard that.
Yeah, I said that. You know, that was on Hanukkah. I said that. Remember that? But whatever it is, all of a sudden you begin to see a guy, and you know, the next day, hey, there's something strange about you. You see? And the next day, what's happening here? He's a guy that walks in, he will be emitting a force, a ruchnis that is so powerful, everybody will be drawn to him. That's how he does his job. You see, that's how he, and you know, it's like all of a sudden the whole human race begins to feel this guy. You see? It's astounding what's going to happen. Greater than the Malachim. And believe me, you'll know it. You know what I'm saying? When you see a guy greater than Malachim, you know that he's greater than Malachim. What's interesting is, I once saw a statement by Rav Kaduri. Rav Yitzchak Kaduri, he was the greatest of the Mikubolim. A tremendous person. Tremendous Mikubal. And he once made a statement, which I saw written. He said, the Mashiach is going to be a person that will become known, not as Mashiach, but somehow his name will get out there. As an unusual person or whatever, you know. And then he says, and then all of a sudden, he's going to become known again. And slowly, it's going to become more and more apparent who he is. At the end of Nun Beis, Pasuk, I think it's Ches, Pasuk 8, there's an incredible statement. It says, Umishchas me'ish mar'ehu. The Mashiach, and it's referring to the Mashiach, okay? Mishchas me'ish, he looks like an incredibly corrupted person. Okay, the Targum says that who is this person? You know, Mishchas me'ish mar'ehu, hashchofa. This guy looks like a corrupted person. Okay. And he says people are going to look at this guy and say, you're Mashiach.
We have a drive to sin, right? There's so many different ways to be a Baal Gaiva, right? Or to, engage in promiscuous behavior, or to engage in behavior which clearly makes us feel as if we are God or supreme, and so on. Once we understand this, we can now understand Moshiach ben Yosef. Moshiach ben Yosef was very interesting. There's something else that he has, Moshiach ben Yosef, because the Moshiach ben Yosef not only has the capacity to know, to learn ideas at the highest level, but what he also has the capacity is his ruchnius, his dveikus. Could you imagine the kedusha, the holiness of this Mashiach ben Yosef? Imagine, and I'll just let you imagine. Imagine a person who has unbelievable koyach, capacity for righteousness, for kedusha. I mean, just think of any of the great rebbes, right? And their capacity for spirituality, right? And then imagine all of a sudden they are blocked from even approaching a millimeter of that kedusha. So you're going to say to me, how in the world does that happen, right? Believe me, it can happen in man's, health and so on. You know, people go through all kinds of trials and tribulations where they are forced in many ways, and I'll say the word, to sin, right? And I will show you what all this means. That all of a sudden, Mashiach ben Yosef is not only blocked with his capacity to be a tremendous goyin in learning and so on, because that's what he's supposed to do for the Jewish people, but he's blocked in his ability to be an incredible, not only tzaddik, but kodosh, holy person, which means dveikus, to be close to God. Yet there's something in him, you can look at it as a phenomenal Yetzer Hara, you know, right? We're talking about one of the Shvatim, one of the greatest of the Shvatim. So the Medrash says an incredible thing, that God all of a sudden spoke to the angel, right, of Taiva, right, especially with women, right, and he said to the angel, fire up. You need to take away his free will. That Yehuda must be together with Tamar. So Yehuda had no free will. Had no free will. But the Medrash says that the one who said Mimeni was God. Where God said, Yehuda said, Tzadka, she's right. God said, I took away your free will. You had no choice. There was no way you could fight the Malach, right? Obviously, the Malach turned up his hormones and that was the end of it and finished. You see? So what do we see? Yehuda, that's the forerunner of Mashiach ben David, right? But wait a minute. Somebody in the Parsha of Mashiach can be forced to sin. Even though it looks like a sin, but he can actually be forced to sin where he has no free will. Yet maybe he thinks that he did have free will. And he will now feel terrible. This is something that can be given to somebody who has the Yesod, basically, of Mashiach ben David. You see? So what that did is it can destroy his ruchnius. I mean, imagine some tzaddik, some famous tzaddik or some famous rebbe that committed a terrible sin of what's called hashchosa or zima or whatever, immorality and so on. But he doesn't know that God took it away, the free will. Could you imagine the suffering that he would have with this person who has this type of neshama? So we begin to understand that there's a second dimension to the suffering of Mashiach ben Yosef. And he's not the only one. Much worse than that. You know why? Because not only does he have an abnormal drive to sin, he has an abnormal drive to be a kodesh. That's the killer. Could you imagine, like I said, a person that has the neshama of an unbelievable kodesh, holy man, and he has the neshama of an unbelievable Baltaiva or Russia? How do you exist in the same body? You have an idea what kind of challenge that is? What kind of a conflict that is? To be subject to the drives and the Yetzer Hara in the klipa of both. The Kedusha is mamish akin to an unbelievable tzaddik, the dvekus, the drive to be a tzaddik, and then the drive to commit sins. And he's got to go through this. Right. That's the Yisurin of the Mashiach ben Yosef. And now you understand what it means.
This is the job of Moshiach ben Yosef, to go to the other side, sort of like an undercover cop, trying to take down the cartel, do it all by himself. He has to be in the inside. He has to look like a Nachash. He has to look like the bad guy in order to bring victory, to bring down wickedness.
After all, he will be the most perverse person who has ever set foot in this world. Everyone will be under his dominion, including wicked men. Take Hitler, Stalin, Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and Kim Jong-un. Combine them all and then multiply by many times.
You're talking about a guy who's, nobody would ever suspect he's Mashiach. You see? And the truth is, you see that when the brothers came to Egypt and they finally came to Yosef, right? So Yosef was going to reveal himself. What did he say? Ani Yosef. And they were stunned. That's exactly how the Mashiach is going to reveal himself. Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. That is the viceroy of Egypt. And they were absolutely, like the Torah says, they were just dumbstruck. That's the Gilu of the Mashiach ben Yosef.
If he is revealed and the prophet Isaiah sees a man who is despised and hated, then how the heck does he become king? How can somebody who is despised by all and hated become king? In Isaiah 52, my name is hated daily. This being that's called the name of Hashem. How do you become king?
I understood immediately that these guys know the highest level and they're trying to break it down for us. Like, you know, if you want to get close to the heart of Hashem, I feel like your teachings are the highest level right now. Now, there's no one else really doing what you two are doing by breaking it down in English. You know, like for the English speakers, which is like, I don't know, majority of the world, that
cause Mahimna, the faithful shepherd, to be freed from his prison, for he's buried amongst the wicked, and we do not recognize him because he looks like the Erev Rav. And that's my purpose. They have no comprehension of the owner of the pit. They have no comprehension of Mahimna. They have absolutely no they didn't even know it was part of Torah, right? Yeah, everybody knew, but nobody really put it together. But in reality is I believe that the owner of the pit has arrived. We live in such a generation that a level of Torah has never been revealed. Many times the sages tell us that different souls come from different levels of the worlds. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Beriah, Tziluth, and Yetzirah and Asiya. But we've never had a soul from Atziluth, right? We never had somebody who's really came down from the highest worlds. It's always been from Beriah and below, from the world of Beriah, which is why we have the Torah with the letter Bet, right? To signify that it was from the Torah of Beriah. It's Beriatic Torah.
He's here. I don't believe he's in Jerusalem. I do believe, however, he's in New York. He's in the United States. And that may sound odd, but the reason for that is that the Moshiach, Messiah, is born and raised in the country that he will ultimately change. I don't know if I want to use the word overthrow, because I don't know if that's the proper word, but clearly modify, radically alter and change.
Well, in this, amongst the sages and amongst the Kabbalah, we know that there is a Torah of Atziluth. There's a higher Torah that's going to be revealed by the faithful shepherd.
Mahimna is the true king. So the Zohar actually says something quite amazing about Mahimna. He says that he's not just king of this world; he's king of the world above. It says that he rules by the crown of his father, which is the supernal Abba, and he sits upon the throne of the supernal Ima. And this hints to the Torah of Atzilus, because the Torah of Atzilus does not just apply to this reality. It subjects the heavens themselves, which is what's written, by the word of his mouth he created the heaven and the earth. Thus, the Zohar says that he's ruler both below and he's ruler above. He's king below and he's king above. And there is no higher king. This was also the secret of Yeshu, because obviously, what's the point of the beginning of their writings where it says, you know, his father's name is Yosef, and he was a tzedek, he was righteous. Well, and then never mention him again. We don't know how he dies. Never mentioned again, as if he's not an important character. What was the purpose of mentioning Yosef and mentioning tzedek, righteous? Well, that hints to us Moshiach ben Yosef. And so Yeshu is a version of Moshiach ben Yosef, as is revealed by the Rav Du, who was the rabbi of Ramchal, and the Ramchal also does the same thing. And as I stated about the calf of Jeroboam, you can see that he essentially made himself the central figure. But Mahimna is the true king. And in there's a section about Mashiach, and it talks about him coming from the Galilee, and it's fitting, but it does not specifically say Melech HaMashiach. And so the wording is very, very particular. So then it says, for that reason, Mashiach is called the one who fell. And the word fallen there is unafel, very much like the Nephalim, which means the fallen ones. And you, faithful shepherd, are the owner of the pit. The problem with Moshiach ben David and Moshiach ben Yosef is that if those that are not learned in the very deep mysteries mistake Moshiach ben David specifically as being Melech HaMashiach, but in no place does it state that Moshiach ben David is called Melech HaMashiach. He's not called King Messiah. And one represents the right, one represents the left. They all have the face of an ox to the left. This refers to the left column, which is in the secret of Moshiach ben Yosef. And one refers to the right, which is the Chamor. the donkey, and this is the right side, and this refers to Moshiach ben David. These are left and right. However, Hashem warns us. He tells us, do not go left or right. He tells us, do not go left or right. In the story of Abraham as well, it tells us, if you go left, I'll go right. You go right, I'll go left. However, Ro'ai Mehemna is in the center column.
That's the idea. Okay, so Yalkut Shimoni is saying that there's one Mashiach. By the way, Yalkut Shimoni always speaks of just one Mashiach, except for one place where it does mention Mashiach ben Yosef. And I'll come back to that. Otherwise, it's always one Mashiach, and he's called Ephraim. So what Yalkut Shimoni is doing is saying it's all the same person. All these sources that tell you that there's this Mashiach ben Yosef named Ephraim, and that there's a Mashiach ben David, it's all one Mashiach. It's all one person. And we're later going to see how Ephraim and David are actually one. Amru lefanav, and they tell God, Ribbono shel olam, Master of the universe, Mihu zeh she'anu noflim be'ado? Who is this Mashiach? Who is he? Ma shmo mativo? What is his name? We want to know who is this Mashiach. And what do you think it says? Those are your only two guesses, right? It's not going to be anybody else. Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God told them, Ephraim Mashiach Tzidki Shmo. Only ever speaks of one Mashiach, right? The term Mashiach ben Yosef or Mashiach ben David never appears in Tanakh. Mashiach is always used in the singular. It's one Mashiach. Even the Apocrypha never mentions anything like this. Neither does the Mishnah. Neither do the early Midrashim. Sifra, Mechilta, the early Midrashim don't mention it. The first time we see a mention of Mashiach ben Yosef, like we said, is in that one Talmud, which rejects the idea. So ultimately, there's always talk of one Mashiach. The Rambam says there's one Mashiach that does everything. And then here you have the Yalkut Shimoni that puts everything together and says, yes, it really is one Mashiach. Mashiach ben Yosef is just a moniker, a label for the pre-kingdom phase. Before he is anointed, essentially. He's not a king yet. Right? He's like Yosef, who wasn't really a king. He was a viceroy in Egypt, but he wasn't a king. So there's the phase where where Mashiach is like David, which is actually an anointed king on a throne. And there's the step before that where he's described as a Yosef. So that's what Mashiach ben Yosef is. It's like a label for the same person in two phases. And the Zohar that we quoted, also now you can make sense of that Zohar. Even though the Zohar mentions Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, sometimes it even says Mashiach ben Ephraim, like we saw. It uses different names. But it's actually all just different names for the same person, different phases of the same person. And actually, many sources say exactly that. There's a beautiful Megaleh Amukot that does this. Megaleh Amukot says that actually the letter Aleph, he says, he has a beautiful exposition on this. And at the very end of Megaleh Amukot on Vayit Hanan. And the Ben Ishchai quotes it. The Ben Ishchai actually quotes it on his commentaries on the Sukkah, on Masechet Sukkah, on that one place where Mashiach ben Yosef is mentioned in the Talmud. The Ben Ishchai comments there, citing the Megaleh Amukot. And he says the Aleph is the symbol of Mashiach. So you have all from the Tanakh, through the Apocrypha, through the Mishnah, through the early Midrash, even the Talmud itself, the Rambam, everybody through the Megaleh Amukot, through the Ben Ishchai are actually all telling you the same thing. It's actually all one Mashiach in two phases. And I think also to go back to where we started in Ezekiel chapter 37. And how does Ezekiel chapter 37, the vision of the dry bones, how does it actually end? It says this, Daber aleim, ko amar Adonai Elohim, hine ani lokeach et etz Yosef. God is saying, I'm going to take the tree of Yosef, asher beyad Ephraim, in the hands of Ephraim. V'shiftei Israel chaverav, v'natati otam alav et Yehuda, et etz Yehuda. And I will combine the etz of Yosef with the etz of Yehuda. V'asitim le'etz echad. And I will make them one tree. I will take the two trees of Yosef and the tree of Yehuda, all the different Jewish peoples, all the tribes, and I will combine them into one tree, Beyad Ephraim. Right? It's going to be one tree. And I'm going to take all the children of Israel from all the nations. I'm going to bring them all back to Israel, right? All the Jews and all over the world, wherever they might be in exile, I'll bring them all back. And I will make them one totally united, unified people, upon the mountains of Israel. There will be one king. I'm going to combine Yosef and Yehuda, so there's one divine lineage, one divine line of kings, and there will be one nation from now on. So even Ezekiel chapter 37, where we started, is saying God is going to graft the two trees together and make it one tree. So we have one Moshiach. There's a transformation from one phase to the other. And this is the interesting bit that I want to do a little gematria, because it's always fun to see the mathematical precision in the Torah. And the numbers are really beautiful. Yeah? We live in a very mathematical universe of the Torah itself. Because Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim, that's where the Kabbalists prove it from this verse. Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. The Spirit of God is hovering over the waters, right? What is the Spirit of God? What is Ruach Elohim? If you do the gematria of Ruach Elohim, Ruach, Reish Vav Chet, is 214. Elohim is 86. So Ruach Elohim is 300. Okay? The gematria of Ruach Elohim is 300. Nice. Now, if you take the word Elohim, and you want to say, okay, superficially it's 86, but what is the inner value? What is the spirit of Elohim? What is the inner spirit, the Ruach Elohim? And you open it up, so you spell it. Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei, right? And then Elohim, Lamed. Lamed is Lamed Mem Daled. And Hey Yud. And Yud Vav Daled. And Mem is Mem, right? You spell out Elohim, and then you take the value of it. Guess what you get? The inner value, the milui of Elohim, is also 300. Meaning, when you take Elohim and you open it up, and you want the Ruach of it, its value becomes 300, which is the value of Ruach Elohim. You see that? Like Ruach Elohim is 300, and when you actually open the word, the Elohim, in to get its Ruach, it's 300. To get the inner spirit of something, to look beyond the superficial number, you have to open it up. And then you get its real inner value. That's where you get the Ruach of it. So look at this beautiful thing. Take the milui of David, the inner spirit of David. Daled Vav Yud Daled, the complete David. Daled is Daled Lamed Taf, it's 434. Vav Aleph Vav is 13. Yud is Yud Vav Daled 20. And another Daled Lamed Taf, 434. If you add it up, it's 901. So meaning the inner value of David, the spirit of David, is 901, is Ephraim.
Wow.
So it is one person ultimately. Wow. And even mathematically it's the same. The inner spirit of David is Ephraim. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. And of course, and you prove milui from Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. And what was Ruach Elohim, the Midrash says, right? It's all, everything ties in. I was saying before that there was this theme of birds. Mashiach is in a place called Kansipo. This is the conduit of heaven and earth. He's in a place for 70 days called the bird's nest. Kansipo, the bird's nest. And he comes back to earth through the bird's nest, through a pillar of fire. Pillar of fire, bird's nest. We also saw Yonah. Yonah means a bird.
Malachi 4, verse 5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So Elijah is another type of Mashiach. When God says, behold, I will send you Elijah, he doesn't mean Elijah that had come before, that is in 1 Kings, reincarnated. He's making a reference to the Mashiach to come. Now, many of those who follow Judaism believe that Elijah and who they call Ben David and Ben Joseph are three individual men that will come in the latter days. Okay, they're not. They're the same individual. Elijah, Ben David, and Ben Joseph are the same individual. Okay, God is not in the habit of sending three men to do the work of one. It's just not his way.
Yonah was that symbol of Eliyahu reviving this and giving a person a renewed spirit. He comes back as a prophet.
So the Raya Mehemna is supposed to be a mortal man as well, a mortal human being born of a woman.
Raya Mehemna, he'll be slow to speech. He'll have a stutter. He'll speak Lashon HaChodesh in a funny way. He will be regarded likened to a dead dog, and as mixed multitude, he will be completely and utterly rejected during the time in which the revelation will occur. It says here in Naso, it says, Eliyahu said to the faithful shepherd, it's time to rise up and bring the full redemption. You intone a solemn oath upon me, making me swear that I should hasten the redemption. For your sake I wish to rise. Since the Holy One, blessed be he, gave me permission to reveal myself to you in your prison, in your place of burial, and do you good. This refers to poverty. A person who's poor is likened to a person who's dead. And so then therefore, it's written, better is a poor and wise son, as I was hinting to you earlier, because this poor wise son is the son of Atzilus. It says, the faithful shepherd said to him, I intone on you solemnly the name of Yudke Vavke, that you will do your utmost not to delay the redemption, since I am existing in great distress. For about me it is written, and he looked this way and that way, and when he saw there was no man, an example Shemos 2:12, to help me, to take me out of this distress from this grave.
Mine is the fact he's hated and despised. So it's not going to be by charisma or by belief in the Moshiach that he built his kingdom. Because somebody that's hated and despised, nobody is following him. So what is that revelation going to look like? The revelation of the arm of Hashem is actually here in Isaiah 30:27 to 33. Behold, the name of Hashem is coming from afar. His anger is flaring, and the burden is heavy. His lips are full of rage, and his tongue is like a consuming fire. So you imagine this being has been hated and despised daily. All of a sudden, it's revealed. His full being is revealed, and this is what it happens. His breath is like a raging stream that reaches up to the neck to sift the nations in faulty sieve, and to be a diverting bridle upon the cheeks of the nations. This is what the revelation of the arm of Hashem will look like. I alone, remember, he is despised and hated by all. There's no armies with him. There's nobody with him. I alone have trodden a winepress, not a man from the nations was with me. I trod on them on my anger and trampled them in my wrath, and their lifeblood spurted on my garments. So I sullied all my garments. For a day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redemption has come. He says, I looked, but there was no helper. I was astounded, but there was no supporter. So my arm wrought salvation for me, and my wrath was supported for me. I stepped on peoples in my anger and made them drunk with my wrath, and I threw their lifeblood on the ground. So,
since it says about me, for they made his grave amongst the wicked, Yeshayahu 53:9. They do not recognize me, but regard me as one of the evil mixed multitudes, like a dead dog that has caused a stench among them. The wisdom of the scribe shall become vapid stinking among them in each and every city. Who is Roy Mehemna? They will reject it completely. They'll regard him as an evildoer. They'll regard him as mixed multitude and as a dead dog. They'll see him as evil, as an evildoer, because they will imagine in their mind that he exalts himself. They will view him as a dead dog, although he'll be the king though, because David Amelech said what? A dead dog is better than me. So he was likened to a dead dog. And the same thing in the secret of Yaakov. And so then therefore, but they'll regard him as a dead dog, which means an evildoer that's unredeemable, because a person who's dead can't perform teshuvah. And so they'll say that this person is guilty of such horrific things that he's not forgivable, which is he was wounded because of our transgressions, and because they will not recognize him. They'll refuse to help him in any type of capacity. He will be left in destitute and poverty. The Torah is only maintained by he who's willing to die for it. Death means none other than poverty. And because a poor person is likened to a dead person. So then therefore it's written that the Torah is maintained only by he who's willing to die for it. This is that faithful son who's called Raya Mehemna, who's called the son of the king. He will die for the Torah, meaning that he will live in poverty for the Torah to fulfill better is a poor and wise son, because this is all being fulfilled at the Peshat level. And so it says that in every place the wisdom of the scribes will become vapid, it'll become stinking.
But you know what Moshiach ben Yosef really did? he created a new form. What did I say? A new form of relationship with the Satan. And that is the klipa itself. What does that mean? That means he said the following. You know, my relationship with the Satan, and therefore to take back the Satan, where is the arena of the war? Well, it's either external, like I said, right? Or it's internal, right? That's like saying, okay, he's either external, where I live in a city and I'm being attacked by an army of another city, another country. That's external. Or I live in a neighborhood, and guess what? The Satan lives in a house right next to mine, but he doesn't live in my house, you see? So what the Moshiach ben Yosef said is the relationship that I will now have with the Satan, because that's the way I can do it in a shorter amount of time, is the Satan is moving into my house. What is that? That means the Moshiach ben Yosef is now going into or living together with in the same apartment as the Satan himself. You see, that's called he entered the klipa itself. He didn't have that before. Well, the neshama of the Moshiach ben Yosef enters the klipa itself and fights the Satan within his own boundaries. What that is, what does that mean? That means he now becomes subject to the temptations because his shorish is connected, his root soul is connected to the root soul of the Satan. That means his drive becomes super. Right, he's no longer an average person, you know. Well, the Satan lives a couple of houses down, okay, he's trying to tempt me to sin. But wait a minute, the guy moved into my house. Wow, you know what that did to my drives? It made it unbelievably difficult to survive. Because I now have a super Satan. That's called entering the klipa itself. That's what the Moshiach ben Yosef apparently did. And therefore, when he resists the Satan, he can draw out an enormous amount of sparks because his root is connected to the root of the Satan. Now, we don't even know what that means. What does it mean to be subject to the urges and drives of the Satan himself? You see, we don't know.
And what's happening here? Because like I say, we're not talking about an average guy. We're talking about a guy who has incredible potential. It's a very important concept, I'm telling you. Don't underestimate it. But in any case, and therefore he himself probably suspects, but suspecting is one thing and being is another. The Moshiach ben Yosef, whoever the guy is, whoever he is, has two phases. There's Moshiach b'kilkuloi, in his destructive, deformed phase. That's b'kilkuloi. That's the inyan of the Yisurim that the Yalkut, the Medrash talks about, is the whole Yisurim. And like the Ova said to him, which is amazing, you're greater than us, you see, because the Gzeris on you were terrible, severe, and bad. You see, then they tell that to the Mashiach ben Yosef. So therefore, that's Mashiach b'kilkuloi. But the Mashiach now, obviously, when he gets the Yechida, is called b'tikunoi. He has a tikkun. You see, he's changed. So the Mashiach ben Yosef has to grow. What am I talking about? Rehabilitation. The Mashiach ben Yosef has to be rehabilitated. People think that all of a sudden some guy's going to be coming, I hate to say it, but riding on a white horse, you know, or maybe driving in a Lexus, a white Lexus. Today it would be a white Lexus instead of a white horse. You take a guy like this, where the office admit that he's much worse off than they are, and it's incredible, right? And you talk about the Moshem, you know, he's screaming, you know, I got to get out of this because I'm dying here. You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, he's released. He's released.
Moshiach is going to be coming, ani, meaning that he doesn't care about all this gashmi of this world, materialistic,
and is going to go on the chamor, on the chumriyot, on the materialism. He's going to overcome his desires to do stupid things and sins. That's Moshiach.
Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now please note that the dragon in this passage is symbolic of the devil, and this beast is one who receives his power, his position, and his authority by the devil himself. So many Christians see this beast in Revelation and the lawless one in 1 Thessalonians to be the same person, because both people will be directly influenced by Satan in a powerful way.
You see, that's what the Mashiach ben Yosef did. And that automatically increases exponentially the sufferings of the Mashiach ben Yosef. And therefore, he is subject to tremendous chet and tumah. Right. All of a sudden, his world changes, because now the Satan has a whole different access to him that he has with the normal people. And we will see that. Now, where do we see this? Well, let's take a look. We will see now, why is it that many events that are connected with the messianic process all seem to have the appearance of sin? You know?
And that's because as his Torah begins to be revealed, it will begin to spread throughout all of Israel, because it's the inner levels of the Torah. But they won't be able to get rid of it because it's the most inner level of the Torah. And so then they'll try to remove it in all the places where they're exiled, because the exoteric, the externalities of the religion, the pishat and the simple meanings, will seek to rebel, because ultimately it's the death of those simple things. It's the death of the externality. And when something is put into a position where it's threatened, what happens? If you push a dog into a corner, it attacks you. And so then in the same likeness, that's what will happen. All of the klipot, the husk, will be burned up. But during the process of them being burned up, they'll seek self-preservation. And so they'll seek to cleave to the Peshat, and they'll try to remove all of the teachings of Ra and Mehemna. They'll try to stop it from spreading. They'll try to stop the light. But the light will be so pure and so clear and self-evident that when it's revealed, they won't be able to get rid of it. It'll continuously keep coming back until ultimately it'll engulf it all. And so the faithful shepherd, as I said, is the secret of the crown. Of the crown. So he's called Melech HaMashiach.
The Lord, he has been hidden in this place until the time comes. A vision from the Lord came to Zerubbabel ben Shealtiel, governor of Judea in the times of the Persian rule over the land of Israel. He tells, "A wind lifted me up between heaven and earth and carried me to the great city Nineveh, city of blood." This is an allusion to one of the symbols of the Assyrian exile of the 10 lost tribes, also known as the Kingdom of Ephraim. There, Zerubbabel narrates, "I saw a man who was despicable, broken down and in pain. He said to me, 'This is the powerful Rome, bound in chains,' as stated by prophet Isaiah, chapter 53:3. He was despised and rejected of men, a man of pains. Then a winged divine being arrived. He was Michael, who is also Memtet Matat, the angel of Ephraim, and the whole house of Israel. The angel answered Zerubbabel, saying, 'This is the Messiah of the Lord. He has been hidden in this place until the time comes.'"
Why does God allow the Antichrist to come into the world? Well, take a look at the world.
There's another rabbinical statement in the Medrash. It says the following. God says, I can save you. I can save you from any tragedy, any calamity, any problem. But on one condition, do not speak Lashon Hara. This is what God himself says. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, why? Why is it that God says that if you do not speak slander or Lashon Hara, that he will remove or minimize the problems that you have? This is the question that we must ask. The definition is as follows. Any communication that will harm another person, that is the definition of Lashon Hara. Yes, that's what it is. And make no mistake, it doesn't make a difference how you communicate. You can speak Lashon Hara, you can even do what? You can write Lashon Hara, or whatever. If you communicate something that harms another person, that is Lashon Hara. And by the way, even if that statement is true, in fact, especially if that statement is true, it is Lashon Hara. If that statement is false, then it is worse than slander. So the Talmud says, what is the greatest of all sins? The truth is, you know. The Talmud says that the greatest of all sins is speaking Lashon Hara or slander. That's incredible. Could you imagine? How is it possible that the greatest of all sins is speaking slander? You mean to tell me that speaking slander is even worse than desecration of the Sabbath? How can that be? And I want to tell you something. The rabbis don't exaggerate merely to win a point. Of course not. If this is what they say, then this is exactly what it means. Achov, he was Ahab, he was a king in Israel for many years. And it says that in the generation of Achov or Ahab, that the Jews worshipped idol. All the Jews worshipped idols. This is what it says. And therefore, as a result of that, because they worshipped idols, of course, it was a tremendously sinful generation. Yet that statement in the Medrash says that when they went to battle, they never lost a battle, not once. So this Medrash says the way, how is it possible? Is because in the entire generation of Achov, nobody spoke Lashon Hara. Do you believe this? It's hard to understand how that could be, that they worship idols, yet they do not speak Lashon Hara. But that's what it says. That because they did not speak slander, they never lost a battle. That is absolutely incredible. Why? That is the question we must ask. And it says in the same place that in the generation of Shaul by King David, that the Jews lost battle after battle. Even though the average child in that generation was able to expound or sermonize on a particular pasuk or verse 49 different ways. Yet it says that they lost battle after battle. Why? Because they spoke Lashon Hara or slander. Do you believe this? If you think that you understand what the concept of Lashon Hara or slander is, you are gravely mistaken. That a person's personal mazel is destroyed because of Lashon Hara. That's right. That means when a person speaks slander, that actually destroys his luck, his fortune. But what did I say? I said that the greatest way, of course, to avoid judgment, right, is to avoid the whole concept of prosecution, to stop the Satan. But how do we stop the Satan? This is the question. I will tell you. Imagine, this is a courtroom, right? And in here, you're sitting, your soul is sitting. And in front of you, there's this awesome angel. Who is this angel? The Satan, that angel, that of course is a prosecuting attorney. He is sitting there and he's prosecuting you, right? What is the Satan doing? Well, he's doing exactly what he's doing. He's prosecuting you, correct? But wait a minute, what is the nature of every prosecution? I will tell you. You remember, it's Lashon Hara, it's slander. Do you remember what the definition of slander was? The definition of slander is any communication that will harm another person. That is the definition of slander. But therefore the Satan has the right to condemn you, because every condemnation is really a prosecution. Just like measure for measure can what? Can stop the judicial process, I had previously mentioned. It can also initiate the judicial process. Measure for measure. What does that mean? It means the following. Imagine you walk over to a person and you start speaking Lashon Hara or slander. What are you really doing? You are condemning that person. Therefore, measure for measure, because you condemn another person, therefore the Satan has the right to condemn you.
So what the Moshiach ben Yosef said is the relationship that I will now have with the Satan, because his shorish is connected, his root soul is connected to the root soul of the Satan.
Everybody will be drawn to him. That's how he does his job.
As you will see. And because we don't know about this idea, the Satan dances on our heads. Exactly.
But there seems to be a level that's beyond Nevuah. It's the Torah of the Nun Sharabina. And that Torah comes through Haskalah, not Nevuah, because there's no Messiah to the Mashiach. So therefore, it comes from Haskalah. And that's the ability to know certain things that Nevuah can't even tell you. And that's why he's greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, because he is the actual Mashiach, and he's completely imbued with the concept, the process of Haskalah, and therefore he knows everything that he knows, the whole 50th gate, without even learning it from anyone. See, the Mashiach, the strange thing about the Mashiach, what it says in Yaski Lavi, that in a certain sense the Mashiach does not have a Rebbe. That's what it means. Every Gadol and everyone in Klal Yisrael had a Rebbe. The only one who did not have a Rebbe was Moshe Rabbeinu. But even he had a Rebbe. His Rebbe was God. I mean, through a process called Nevuah. But the Mashiach does not even have a Rebbe from God to Nevuah. He has a Rebbe with God through Haskalah. He replicated the process of knowing something through Haskalah, which means he not only knew it because God told him, but he could actually figure it out because of his relationship with the Shekhinah.
Automatically, the heavenly tribunal is convened and the prosecuting attorney, the Sultan, begins, and it's automatic. There's no way to stop it. The only way to get out of that judicial system is if you have merits of mercy and kindness. That's the only way. But if you do not have merits, then it's too bad. And I want to tell you something. God will not intervene in that court to save you because he created that court and the prosecuting attorney, the Sultan, to uphold justice. He will not intervene if that's the reason, if you are into that court. He will not intervene at all.
The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place.
The snake was the mouthpiece of the Sultan, and the Sultan was trying to tempt him, of course, to do that sin. It's because of Lashon Hara. That's the way the Sultan has access to this person's sins. Therefore, the Sultan, in order to take his divine energy, he's got to get him to speak Lashon Hara, slander, and then he can walk over to and take that energy and survive. This is what he has to do. Sultan walks over. He walks over to God, to the divine presence itself. And he says to the divine presence, to God, he says, listen, they don't want you, I want you. What does that mean? It means they've sinned, and therefore they're not interested in the presence of God being amongst them. Therefore, I want you, which means that I want to take from the nourishment, and the Hebrew word for that is yonik. I want to be yonik. I want to nourish from the divine presence itself. Imagine, when you don't speak Lashon Hara, it is not only your personal mazel, your personal fortune that you restore, but you save the family of God. What is God going to give you? I will tell you. The Chavetz Chaim says that the reward of those people who do not speak Lashon Hara or slander is incomprehensible even to those people who are at the top of the future world. This is what he says. Could you imagine what this means? This is therefore what we see. We have the ability to do what? To change what's called Golus to Geula. We can change exile to redemption. The secret is the greatest secret ever known to man that has been revealed to us by our rabbis. Do not speak Lashon Hara or slander. This is the actual secret. But I want to tell you something. You must know the laws of Lashon Hara to know when Lashon Hara, when slander is permitted and when it is forbidden. Without that, you can't possibly really observe this commandment. Therefore, it is critical to learn the laws of Lashon Hara itself. Therefore, think about it. You don't speak, the redemption comes. Your personal mazel, your personal fortune is restored. Do you then see why the true power of speech, that speech itself, determines life and death and determines so many other things also?
Look, the wars of Moshiach ben Yosef are called the wars of Hashem. However, as with all wars of Hashem, that does not exactly mean that the wars are fought in the name of Hashem. We remember that Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed Yerushalayim and exiled Yehudah, exiled Judah, acted as Hashem's agent. He was used by Hashem to do this. As the divine agent, he ruthlessly murdered tens of thousands of Jews, burned down the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and perpetuated so many horrible things. Nonetheless, the Tanakh and the scriptures are clear that he acted as the unwitting and unknowing agent of Hashem to punish our people. And it's possible, I'm just saying it's possible, that Moshiach ben Yosef could very well do the same thing. I want to close with this. The Rambam